Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Irene Varley, Director of Education for the Dibble Institute. And joining with me today in presenting this webinar is Kathy Guidry, the webinar organizer. Hey, Kathy.
Hi, welcome everyone.
Well, before we begin, I'd like to point out a few housekeeping tips. If you should experience any audio difficulties during this broadcast, please note the phone number listed here or on the link in your email connecting you to this webinar. You know, you can both listen on the phone while viewing the webinar on your computer. We recommend that you use your earphones while connected to the broadcast. If you have any difficulty or any technical questions, send those to Kathy in the chat box or the question box located on your control panel. We will have time for specific questions and answers at the end of each presentation, and then again as time allows after both speakers have given their presentation. If your question is not addressed during that time, you will definitely receive an answer through email. Our timetable is a short 60 minutes, and we are recording it, so it'll be available on our website probably no later than Monday. Well, the Dibble Institute is a national independent nonprofit organization dedicated to equipping young people with the skills and knowledge they need to develop healthy romantic relationships now and for their futures. And we always say at Dibble that a person's love life is never neutral. Well, Charlie Dibble, our founder, certainly dedicated his retirement years to working with young people and recognized this point right away. He heard many painful stories following their parents' relationship issues, and it was a time the divorce rate was reaching its peak, and Charlie was concerned with the decreasing models of healthy relationships teens had to emulate. Being a natural problem solver, Charlie searched for solutions and found there were few programs addressing the issues for youth. And so, with the support of fellow businessmen and educators, he founded the Dibble Institute. There's more information on Charlie on our website. Just go to About Us on our www.dibbleinstitute.org website. On the toolbar there, you'll learn more about Charlie and how all this got started. And we know that Charlie would be very proud of the work being done by our speakers today. For those of you that are new to us, we are often asked about our value platform. While we are pro-marriage and pro-stable committed unions, we are not anti-divorce or anti-single parent. We know that too often kids suffer in high conflict and complex family homes. And by the way, young people we're going to talk about today often have experienced these in complex family homes. And they seek a love connection while lacking good communications, conflict resolution, and other essential relationship skills. And should they have a child, the impact of a lack of these skills continues throughout the parenting years, even if the love relationship doesn't last. When that happens, the children suffer. We also acknowledge there are many heroic single parents doing amazing things for their kids today, and that is exactly what we want to help with. Our programs never assume the gender of the young person's partner, and we have written relevant scenarios with input from our young people that are in our curriculum that address all kinds of current relationship situations. So with that, let's begin today. Laura Waggle is a mother of 3 children and grandmother of 1. Look at that picture. Can you believe it? She lives and works in Zanesville, Ohio. Laura works locally as a freelance writer, writing tutor, literary editor, and a professor's assistant at Ohio University, where she is completing her bachelor's degree in education. This past winter, Laura contracted with Forever Dad Center for Fathers and Families in Zanesville to deliver Relationship Smarts Plus curriculum to teenage male felons incarcerated at the Perry Multi-County Correctional Facility. She serves 10 to 20 young men each week at the facility and is excited about the changes she sees in her pupils. Welcome, Laura. Tell us, can juveniles in detention centers change their attitudes and behaviors through relationship education class?
Thank you, Irene. I believe that they can. And one reason that I feel like it's pretty effective is that I have the unique experience of delivering this relationship programming to, in essence, a captive audience. When Forever Dads contracted me to begin teaching these classes at the Perry Multi-County Juvenile Facility, I found that the two pods of young men who I work with were very receptive to the material because they are in a place of transition and difficulty in their life. They're looking for answers. The two sessions that I teach each have a group of 5 to 7 young men in it, so I end up with anywhere between 10 and 20 young men a week. This facility is particularly geared towards rehabilitation, so it works very well with our program from DIBBLE. So I utilize the Relationship Smarts Plus curriculum, and as I will go into later, I do interweave the Love Notes curriculum into it as well. As we move to the next slide, I'll just show you a picture of the facility in which we work. As I said, the two classes, they are all young men who have committed a felony, and we do 12 weeks of sessions, so that works very well with the Relationship Smarts curriculum, and we do that one evening a week. And as we move to the next slide, one of the most important aspects that I feel that can be addressed through the DIBBLE curriculum is the power of choice. And one of the questions that one of the participants in this webinar had asked was, if you have a transient population and there's very little time to connect with them before they move on to their next situation, what are some of the key and important things that you want to convey to them in this relationship programming, in that window of opportunity that you have them? And I really believe that empowering them through choice is extremely important. And as we move to the next slide, I'll expand on that a little bit. Incarcerated youth often feel quite powerless. Through their choices, they've come into this place of incarceration, and they don't have very many choices once they're behind bars. Frankly, most of them feel powerless to change their patterns of behavior. And I try to build my program delivery upon the principle that we can each own our own choices, whether we continue on our current path or we choose one which is more healthy and beneficial to helping us reach our personal goals for life. Part of that is reminding them of that power that they do have, that they don't have to revisit the choices they've made in the past. They don't have to repeat the choices of their family or of the friends in their neighborhood, but that they can, through their choices today, create a new future. Another way that I feel choices are very important in this program is to engage the participants in creating their lessons. So as I progress through the program, I try to preview the topics that are moving forward and allow the guys to suggest, whether it be music or movies or multimedia, which tie in with our future current lessons, but also are really relevant to them, you know, and it's going to be different with every set of pupils that you have. So if your particular group has a lot of people who are really interested in the rap genre, then you can incorporate some rap music into it. That works. If you have some that are interested in country, you can incorporate that as well. Music has been a very powerful tool, and their ability and being allowed to participate through suggesting some of the music works pretty well. So as I try to incorporate those materials into our lessons, it kind of fosters a sense of ownership and investment in the lessons for them. I think it gets the students more engaged, and I know that that's an issue for those of us working in with young people in general, but especially in corrections. We want these students to be engaged in the lessons, to feel like it matters to them, it's relevant to them. So as we move to the next slide, some of the tools that I'm using in the classroom are PowerPoints, and some of those are the PowerPoints that have been provided through the DIBEL materials, and some of them are PowerPoints that I've created based upon my study of the curriculum and the materials. As I said, YouTube, when the young guys give me suggestions for videos or movie clips or skits or something that they think is appropriate that goes along with our lesson, I will go through those and screen them at home, and if they're not appropriate, we don't use them. And if I feel that they're appropriate and relevant to the lesson, I try and weave those in, and YouTube has been really useful for that. Also, the Relationship Smarts Plus has an add-on to it with the Antoine Fisher movie. Very, very powerful, and I feel like it was very effective for the young men in my setting because the main character in Antoine Fisher struggles with issues of baggage from the past, having an extremely difficult childhood, problems with violence, problems with aggression. He didn't know how to communicate. He didn't know how to have a healthy relationship. And DIBEL has provided a strong curriculum guideline that goes along with that movie, and it worked very effectively with our young men. Music videos, as I said, they really hooked into some particular artists that they liked a lot. And as we move to the next slide, there's a couple of resources that for me have been very effective, and obviously those of you who are listening, your particular group of students and pupils is going to be unique. So what's going to work for my group, the group that I have right now, may not work for my next rotation. It may not work well for yours, but I can say that these are some resources that have worked well. First and foremost, I want to make note of Love Notes. Even though I'm not primarily using the Love Notes curriculum, I'm using the Relationship Smarts Plus, they are both set up in very similar format, and the lessons really, really fit in and weave well together. So I have utilized the Love Notes CD and DVD that has different skits, it has different resources and PowerPoints that I can pull up, and sometimes the lessons just, they're on the same topic as Relationship Smarts Plus, but they just fit better with my group and with the activities that I know will gel with them. In regard to music resources, I've got to tell you, we have really touched back weekly on a song by Switchfoot that I used in my first lesson. I used it because they're a favorite of mine. And the song, This Is Your Life by Switchfoot, if you have the opportunity to look that up and to listen to the words, it fits very well with this curriculum and with the idea of students owning their life through making healthier choices. You know, the lyrics of the song says, "This is your life, are you who you want to be? Is it everything you dreamed that it would be when you were older?" And I encourage the boys, the young men, weekly to touch back to that. If your life, when you evaluate it as directed through the curriculum and the materials and the lessons that we teach, as you evaluate your life and the values that you hold dear, or the things that, the goals that are important for you in your life, the kinds of relationships you want to have, when you evaluate your own life, if it's not where you want it to be, then that's the time to pinpoint, what do I want? If my life isn't what I want, what changes can I make? What can I be doing differently that can give me the future that I say I want? And the other resource that's worked really well is a song called Just Like You by the rap artist Lecrae. Now, one of the interesting things when you watch this video, which is also available on YouTube, if you watch the video Just Like You, it portrays a young man who grew up in a troubled home. He grew up without strong male role models to guide his path. And so he's crying out and he's looking for someone to teach him how to be a man, how to have a healthy relationship, and he couldn't find any. So he looked to rap stars and he looked to the guys in the neighborhood. And most of them ended up in prison, and he just didn't have good role models to teach him how to have a healthy relationship and have a good future. And so as the song progresses, you see him working through those issues. And I got to tell you, my young men have requested replays of that song over and over. And they've really identified with the main character in that video and with the lyrics and with the style of the rap. They say it's really tight. So they like the way he raps, but the message hits home with them in the images in the video. So as we move on, One of the important things that I think that we should focus on as well is the idea of that fresh start and new beginning. The fact that their relationship smarts that may not have been so smart, the choices they made yesterday, but the choices that they make today can be different. So it can begin anytime. Some of them feel like, in my experience, the young men I've serviced have felt like they've just made too many wrong choices. I can't turn back. I've already been in this relationship with this girl. I've done things one way. How can I change it now? Or I've always, just skipped from one person to another. It's too late for, these are teenagers, but they already have this feeling like it's too late. So reinforcing the idea that they can have a fresh start and a new beginning. And that starts by, the principles that are outlined in our curriculum of Relationship Smarts Plus and Love Notes are reevaluating their goals. What is it that they want? Reevaluating what their values are and what those are rooted in and why. What's important to them? What do they value? Examining their own communication methods and what's been effective and what hasn't. What's not working for them. And looking at real life examples when we watch the skits of how people communicate and argue and handle conflict ineffectively and sharing their own relevant experiences with that. And what could be, sometimes it's easier when you step outside yourself and you're looking at somebody else's situation. So when they look at our resources or the skits we find online that show ineffective communication, they can recognize that in somebody else. And then when you can get them to make that connection between what they see not working with others and their own choices in the past, you kind of see that light bulb go on. And they say, oh, well, what would you tell the person in that skit to do differently? And when they start to think about how to apply those principles to themselves, it fits right in with what we're teaching in the workbooks and in the program. The same goes for them examining their boundaries of intimacy, whether it be sexual intimacy or emotional intimacy with others, letting people in, deciding and not sliding into choices. A lot of times these young guys have found that they slide into behaviors that really they didn't intend, but they never thought ahead of time about how they were going to handle situations. So they just ended up sliding and ended up in situations they weren't prepared for. This fits right in with their need to re-examine their roles in their life and the lives of the people around them. As we move to the next slide, to me, it's really important seeing the transformations that take place as these guys go through the relationship programming. I've had several young men who've made an impact on me, and one was Trey. Trey was the guy who sat in the back of the room, and he was always looking up at the ceiling, never making eye contact, rolling his eyes, hemming, hawing, tapping his fingers, fidgeting, acted like he wanted to be anywhere else but there. And one week, he had spoken up and said, I don't think I really need to be here. I don't want a relationship. I don't want to be in a relationship. I just hit it and quit it. And that works for me. So I don't see why I need this. And, we talked about, saving away, storing away the information for the future, and also whether he was really satisfied with the hit it and quit it that he was talking about, moving from one girl and one relationship to the next. Well, a few weeks later, Trey spoke up and said, I know you think I'm the one who's always just the player, always sitting in the back of the room, never paying attention, don't really care. He said, but I'm listening when you're talking, and I've heard what you said. He said, I've been thinking, I think when I get out of here, I want to get with my baby's mom, and I want to have something different with her. I don't want to have sex with her no more. And he was honest. He said, I've been in here for a while, and honestly, I want it. I want to get me some. He said, but I'm figuring out if I really want something different, then I can't keep doing what I've been doing, using her and using these other girls that I use. So I'm going to try and get out and have a friendship with her and keep sex out of it until we figure out how to do this thing for our baby. And that was phenomenal to me to see him make that choice. And Mike was another young man who, was new in there. He came in midway through our program, and he laughed at the other guys when they would speak up and share their hearts. And he finally stopped and said, okay, yeah, well, I've got a girl waiting at home for me, and I'm afraid that my time in here is going to ruin that when I get out, she won't want anything to do with me. and this is such a waste of time. But you saw just like an epiphany come across him when we talked about the idea of not just serving your time, but letting your time serve you, that your time in behind bars could actually be a gift if you allow it to be. It's not fun, it's not good, but at the same time you can use that time to start evaluating what it is that you want and how you want to live your life when you get back out. And so I began to see a change in Mike in that last couple of weeks where he was talking, he began to speak up and share, not laughing at the others anymore, and started talking about wanting to use the time he has in there to really benefit him so he doesn't go out and end up in the same messes that he's always been in. And Ramon is another young man who has been in a long-term relationship instead of the bouncing around. But they had dove into sex early on in their relationship. It was just kind of a routine now. They'd slid into it, and he didn't see how he could go back on that now. But now Ramon has a plan when he gets out. He says, when I'm on the outs, I'm going to sit down with my girl, and I'm going to talk to her and talk about what it is that we want in our emotional relationship. Also in our sexual relationship, choosing, maybe to make some new plans and maybe not do things the way we've always done them. Maybe start from fresh, start from scratch. And that was great to see. So as we move on to the next slide. One of the important things that I would like to address before I close my portion of the program is review. Some of you have noted in your questions that you struggle to know with how to handle this transient population coming and going and how to get them engaged. And the truth is this: once you've been in there for a while, if you are real with your students and even share a little of who you are, they begin to respect you and they're more likely to receive from you. So when you review and you repeat information, it doesn't have to be same old thing, same thing, different day, because they get to know you and get to understand where you're coming from. I know when I began to share with the young men my own experiences in the past, I was raised in an alcoholic home. Both my parents were alcoholics, and I grew up without that sense of family. And when I was 15, I chose to get pregnant on purpose by an older man. Because I wanted to recreate that family vibe I never had when I was growing up. So I ended up a teen mother, dropped out of high school, 2 children before I hit my 18th birthday. And I made a lot of mistakes. My children were not mistakes, but my choices were not healthy ones, and they were ones that made life so much more difficult. And I involved in many other things that I shouldn't have as far as substances when I was younger. But when the men know that about me, when my students know that, they also know that I'm not, some perfect person trying to talk at them. That, I, like them, have made mistakes, but I have used those mistakes as a springboard to make different choices in the future, and that they can too. That we each can make that choice today to reevaluate what I've done in the past. If it's not working for me, then I can make different choices today and tomorrow. I don't have to keep repeating the same mistakes and the same consequences. I can have a different future than my now or my yesterday. So they celebrate with me that, I've come far. I raised my children, didn't do it perfectly early on, but I learned as I went along, and, now I'm having successes in other areas of my life. But most of all, my biggest success is the fact that I have learned how to use my mistakes instead of allowing them to be wasted and contribute to more mistakes. So they celebrate with me and I celebrate with them as I see these transformations, and they share their testimonials of their plans and their goals. I encourage them, they encourage me, and repeating this process is good. So when we start back up with our next session, some of the same guys will be there, some will be new, but review is not going to be a bad thing, because with every new person in the program, there's new input, and the lessons are going to be different every time you teach them. As long as you can focus your students on the idea that they can have different relationships than the people they see around them. They can have different relationships, different communication, different conflict resolution. different boundaries, different goals, different values than maybe what they've had or their families have had or their friends in their neighborhood have had. They can have a different future. And it's empowering. It really is. And I'm excited to be using the Relationship Smarts Plus in the Love Notes curriculum. And I know that those of you who are listening who have used it have your own stories and your own questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions we have time for.
Great. I just want to give everyone a few seconds to put some questions down in the question box. Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing with us such inspirational stories and successes that you've seen in the programming that you use. Does anyone have any questions out there? You can write them in the questions box. Let me give you a few seconds here. Well, Laura, it looks like you did a great job in tackling. Does anyone, Irene, do you have anything that you'd like to add before we move on?
No, I think I think she answered a lot of the questions that registrants had coming in. So let's move on then, and if anything comes up later, we'll find out because there'll be time for that. Well, you just heard Laura's programming takes place during the detention process. Now we're going to hear from Marcia White, who has directed relationship education for both adult and young adults in reentry. Marcia is a self-sufficiency coordinator with Impact Community Action in Columbus, Ohio. In the Community Action Agency's Job Readiness program for re-entering adults, Marcia added relationship education as a priority program leading to job preparation training. A very, very creative way of sliding in relationship skills. Over the years, Marcia has empowered countless families and individuals by educating them on how to identify the cycle of violence and offering skills to prevent and intervene where family violence exists. Marcia serves on the board with Franklin County Reentry Task Force, the Franklin County Criminal Justice Planning Board, and she is a court-appointed special advocate in Franklin County, Ohio, Guardian Ad Litem. She serves as a community volunteer liaison between faith communities and Choices, a shelter for battered women and children. Busy, busy woman. So Marcia, please tell us, how did you come to integrating relationship education into this re-entry jobs training program?
Hi, Irene and Kathy and Laura, and everyone who is in attendance today, thank you. Well, I was a part of a team of 4 that developed the reentry program for Impact in 2010 out of a need to assist our participants that were entering our Workforce Development Employment Plus class. What we noticed were people that were coming straight from prison or jail were having a hard time adjusting in the classroom environment. Relationships were being formed by people, and they were falling in and out of love with each other, in and out of bed with each other within that 3-week period. So we decided it would serve our participants well, and it would serve the agency well to develop a process or a program that would teach appropriate classroom etiquette. We conducted some community focus groups to find gaps in services and found that no one was addressing relationship education during the reentry or the reintegration process. So the reentry program training consists now of 70 hours of instruction. The missocialization of formerly incarcerated persons is the first week. The second week is cognitive behavioral therapy. And the final week is the love notes, building healthy relationships. It's a 3-week curriculum, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., and each class is designed for 15 to 20 people. They do receive a $100 weekly stipend for their attendance, so it's like coming to work every day, and they receive 2 weekly bus passes so that transportation isn't a barrier to accessing our services. Next slide, please. Upon completion of the classes, our participants are linked with a self-sufficiency coordinator for at least 1 year, and that becomes one of our first committed relationships that they're able to put into practice what they've learned in developing and maintaining healthy relationships. We have the opportunity to see if they've truly internalized the training and that they're able to put into practice their new skills. So using a holistic approach with the Love Notes curriculum as a part of our tailored curriculum, Impact's reentry program helps build emotional intelligence, transferable skills, and self-esteem through introspection, coursework, and group dynamics. Working in partnership with several other local organizations such as the Adult Parole Authority, Alvis House, the Central Ohio Workforce Investment Corporation, the City of Columbus, Restoration Academy, the Exit Program, Federal Probation, and Franklin County Municipal Court Adult Probation, and the Franklin County Reentry Coalition, and several other communities of faith is where we do recruiting from. The participants in Impact's reentry program receive critical skills and techniques needed to reenter society, reestablish relationships, reduce recidivism, and confront significant barriers to their self-sufficiency, thus being just another way of addressing community safety. Next slide, please. So reducing recidivism the reentry program was developed out of a need for the Workforce Readiness Employment Plus program. Reducing recidivism by building relationships using the Love Notes curriculum that is designed to help people make wise relationship and sexual choices that will help them rather than create barriers for achieving their education, employment, relationships, and family goals. What we have found is that the decisions people make in romantic attachments can affect every other aspect of life, school or work success, as well as their physical and mental health, and especially one's child or children. Participants not only gain knowledge, but they also gain real skills for knowing what a healthy relationship is and isn't, for choosing partners wisely, and for developing and maintaining healthy relationships. What we know is that the growth in the number of men and women incarcerated in the United States over the past 20 years has affected an extraordinary number of children and families. And for the men and women returning from prison and jail, family support can be very key a key factor in their successful transition. Most people returning to the community go home to a social network of relatives and close friends. And many reentry initiatives recognize the importance of engaging families and their communities in the reentry process, and the need to address the effects of incarceration on people's children and other loved ones. Love Notes has allowed us ways to incorporate family-focused practices during a person's time in custody, from intake through the planning of a successful return to the family and the community at large. So we've been able to go into several of the local prisons and facilitate the Love Notes curriculum so that the families are receiving the same information that their incarcerated loved one is receiving. Next slide, please. We provide services for participants 18 years of age and older, male and female, who have been released from 1 year of incarceration from jail, prison, or halfway house. So what we know is at least 95% of state prisoners will be released back to their communities at some point. Since 1991, the number of children with a mother in prison has more than doubled, up to 131%. And the number of children with a father in prison has grown by 77%. 22% of the children of state inmates and 16% of the children of federal inmates were age 4 or younger. For both state, 53%, and federal, 50%, inmates, about half of their children were age 9 or younger. So this information alone should be enough for the community at large to recognize the importance and value of relationship education, not only to teens and young adults, but parents of any age. What we know is that healthy relationships don't just happen. It's almost like common sense. It's not so common. Relationship education can't only be taught, but it has to be modeled for the next generations if we're going to have a better chance of establishing or even wanting to establish long-term or permanent relationships Love Notes has been that tool that we've used over the past 5 years with great success. Some parts of the curriculum, and next slide, please. Next slide, please. I already talked where we do our recruiting from. Okay, the part of the curriculum that we use, the 15-week curriculum, and we try to cram as much information as we can into that 1 week. So we sort of pick and choose the materials that most fit the population of people who are in our classroom. So knowing thyself is very important. And the knowing myself part of the curriculum introduces the importance of knowing oneself in order to have a healthy relationship. We use the Primary Colors personality tool. And while there's no scientific evidence about the personality style assessment, it does offer valuable insight about personal strengths and challenges in areas. It does bring about some awareness of personality styles that can increase tolerance for differences and help people use their personality style differences creatively and constructively in relationships of all kinds, at work, with partners, families, or friends. About relationships and love, we use these two major themes and activities from Love Notes to help the participants cultivate a more realistic concept of love. Learn more about relationship development. First, the Greek concept of eros and agape will be explored, though through images and language, to build a sense of importance of balance between the two, and the pitfalls of relationships built mostly on physical or sexual attraction. So for most of our participants, it's the first time being exposed to relationship education. So for them to think that they have some control of a relationships that they enter into or leave is foreign to them. The three important aspects of love is presented: the chemistry, friendship, and trust and commitment. We use the Love Notes workbook applications to facilitate those topics. We know many are going into new and some old relationships, so these lessons aim at equipping them with knowledge of what's important and why choosing wisely and moving slowly will help them make clear decisions. If we ask the classroom for our participants to raise their hands if they know someone who has been incarcerated because of a relationship gone bad, everyone in the room will raise their hand. If we ask them if you know someone who is in the grave because of a relationship gone bad, more than 3/4 of them raise their hand that someone has lost their life trying to exit a relationship because of the volatileness of it, and it was just unhealthy from the entrance of it. The next topic we talk about is thinking about sex and communication, which is really exciting for us, and because it's vital due to the number of people who come into our classes that have been victims or batterers in a violent relationship. Many have had relationships that only consist of conflict, so they don't know how to enter into a healthy relationship that is not based on sex. We use tools from Love Notes to help them develop skills that will allow them to think and reason and not just enter a sexual relationship because he or she looks good or feels good to them, but take the time to really make sure that they know someone that they would even like to know, let alone love. As a society, we've done a good job of teaching sex education and how to have a non-committed relationship. But teaching relationship education with a goal in mind is new, and it's exciting really for all of our participants. Some of the things some of our participants have completed our daily evaluations have stated, I anticipate using my head more in an effort to making better decisions so my results are better. Another participant said, understanding self and having the willingness to correct self can lead to a better self. And another participant said, I loved exploring self-awareness. It helped me in my future relationships. I love that this shows me how to improve my relationship skills with my family. The relationship education is very important to prepare you for your next steps professionally, and I really love the young person that was able to identify that whatever happens in your love life affects your entire life. And then the final quote is, this class has taught me how to communicate with people. There have been 6 people that have gotten married since we began using this Love Notes curriculum 5 years ago. Next slide, please. So why healthy relationships matter in the workplace? Listed in front of you are some of the tools that we've used, but really the bottom line for relationship education in our workforce development program is that businesses lose an estimated $727.8 million in productivity and over 7.9 million paid work days lost annually because of intimate violence. Next slide, please. We really want those that we share this relationship information with to go on to have healthy, happy lives, and it really is our agency and the facilitator's heart desire. But the real bottom line is how unhealthy relationships affect the bottom line of those we assess with employment. Helping them understand how their relationships affect every aspect of their lives and the people that love them has been vital to helping them make better decisions. Because we provide wraparound services through case management for 1 to 2 years, we're in a position to really see how they put into practice what they've learned and if they really have internalized it. Next slide, please. We talk about matters of the heart and reentry and risk factors for a heart attack. Many of our participants who come into the program come with serious health issues. And being released from prison, they have a 10-day supply of their prescribed medication, whether it's high blood pressure, diabetes, or COPD. And so we try to help them see some of the risk factors to their physical health and the things that they can change. Like you can't change your family history, but you can change some of the risk factors like your weight and your blood pressure, exercise, smoking, those kind of changes. So we use the Love Notes curriculum so that they can see some of the things that are in their control when they start looking at making healthy choices in a relationship. Next slide, please. So we have our participants draw what a relationship looks like to them and have them think about the relationship that they're in or the last relationship that they were in and how healthy it was. And the screen that you're looking at now will show on one side the conditional, controlling, and mostly about sex and money, which would be an unhealthy relationship. And when we present that to our class, they don't think of that initially as being unhealthy because that's the normal for them. So if you go to the next slide, please. We have them really stop and think about what a healthy relationship looks like, not only for them, but for the people who love them, and particularly if they have children, and then what an unhealthy relationship looks like. And then because for that week, we do a lot of head work, but then we get into the heart work, and they're able to use some of their artistic abilities, and we have them not talk about what it looks like, but draw pictures of what a healthy or what relationships look like to them, whether it's negative or positive. And then we have them draw what a healthy relationship would look like, and then we have some dialogue about that. Next slide, please. And then we talk about expectations, and it's amazing that many people that are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s have never thought about setting expectations for a relationship. They should just sort of accept whatever comes. And so we talk about the importance of going into a relationship while you're in a fog and you're unaware, you have unreasonable expectations or too low or too high, or some are unspoken. You just think that people know what your language of love is, and then when they don't, it becomes an issue. Ask them to think about what would clear expectations for them to set for themselves and for their potential partner. Next slide, please. And so without expectations, if you fall into a relationship simply because they look cute like this little puppy and you just want to wrap them up in your arms and love on them, and then when you get to know them, next slide please, the expectation is that you're going to keep that little puppy and then that personality comes out because you haven't taken the time to get to know the inner person and not just what you see. Next slide please. This message of sliding, deciding and not sliding into a relationship, if we revisit that more than once over the 3 weeks of the reentry curriculum, because they're coming from being incarcerated. Some are just been home within weeks, some have been home months, and some have been home little less than a year. But those who are just coming home, it's really hard for us to say unless they're in a confined, like a community-based facility. Talking to them about abstaining from sexual relationships is vital. So this lesson is used to reinforce that having sex should be an important decision and not something that just happens, because not just something that happens because he or she looks good to them or feels good. But what we know is that many people do slide when it comes to sex without considering the consequences for themselves, their partners, or potentially a child. The dangers that are involved are not only STDs and unwanted pregnancies, but the potential of violence in an unhealthy relationship increases. Now, I can share with you the statistical information that 55% of the births to mothers aged 20 to 24 occur outside of marriage. Almost 1 in 3 females become pregnant by age 20, and almost 500,000 teens give birth each year. 1/4 of the teen mothers will have a second child before age 20, thus compounding the challenges that the mothers and children will face, and the fathers too, really. And the majority of those mothers and fathers, whether they're teens or in their 20s, most importantly, their children will face significant risks such as poverty and relationship turbulence. And let me just say that why I have a personal interest in making sure that every person that I have contact with has the opportunity to access love notes and relationship education. I'm so passionate about relationship education because of my experience as a young mother in relationship violence. I'm a survivor of domestic violence, so violent, in fact, that I shot and killed my husband, the father of my children, just trying to leave an unhealthy relationship. So mine is a really, really big story, but it has motivated me to make sure that the cycle of violence didn't find its way into another generation in my family. So I have 3 healthy, happy, college-graduated children that are all teachers, and not only that, but they're healthy, happy, whole human beings. So I know, not just professionally but personally, if having a healthy relationship can change the course for my family, it can for any family. So if we want to make sure that the people don't have to deal with unintentional consequences, sometimes deadly, then as a community of service providers, we must make sure that relationship educational and emotional intelligence is being offered. Next slide, please. So the workshop, the 3-week training learning objectives to assist participants to understand how to create a safe environment for recently released citizens to talk and express what they feel and what they need, to aid in determining those needs, to assist participants in how to incorporate some of the Love Notes curriculum that assists recently released citizens on bringing love back into a relationship. We share with our participants how to develop the strategies that will help them and how to deal with unresolved anger and manage that anger so that they will be able to become employable and develop and maintain healthy relationships that will lead to self-sufficiency. So when we're talking about relationships in our workforce development classes, we're talking about romantic relationships, but we're also talking about work relationships, family relationships, the relationships even that they have with themselves and the esteem that they hold themselves in, and even the relationship that they have with their creator. So we don't just leave them, like a lot of them will say, well, I don't need the relationship part of the class because I'm never going to have a relationship anymore. And what we say to them is that you're in relationship with yourself, and that for the next year or 2 you're going to be in relationship with us, And so the same dynamics and level of commitment that come with a romantic relationship should come with all relationships. And that's the last slide. I thank you so much for your participation in today's workshop. It's very exciting. It's very innovative. The thought of being able to help people really be able to accept their accountability and responsibility in developing and maintaining relationships is vital to really not only the community safety and recidivism, but for the next generation, because most of our participants are parents and grandparents. So thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Any questions, Kathy?
Well, I'd like to, while people have a few seconds to write down questions specifically about Marcia's, I want to go back to a question that someone has to Laura. Laura, are you there? I know she might have to unmute herself. The question is, and we know that Laura's got a wonderful personality, obviously. She's got a story that she can share with the young men. And we know that you use a lot of music and a different kind of multimedia to engage them. But this person wants to know, and I think what she's asking is, if you come in on the first day of the session or when there's a new person in the class, is there an activity that might be in relationship smarts or love notes that you use to get them motivated and willing to engage into the class, take a vested interest? Is there something specific that you could put your finger on?
Truthfully, one of the most effective tools that I have found has been the workbooks that come with the Relationship Smarts class, because as soon as a new individual comes into the classroom, if they come in, partway through the session or even toward the end of the session, I still give them a workbook. And, let them know that this is personally for them, and even though they weren't there for the earlier weeks, this is a tool for them to use as a journal for their journey. As they help figure out what it is that they want. And I always tell them to, everyone who comes in, I tell them on the first week, and I tell any new people who come in, whatever you put into this program is what you are going to get out of it. So, you can just put in your time here in this class, but this could actually be something you enjoy, and it could be something that could actually help you to make different choices. And, I sort of, as we enter into the lessons, I do recap a lot on things that we've done in previous weeks. And if there's someone new in there, I may, give a nod to them and say, though you missed this, we have talked in past weeks about this, and you can find material on that in your workbook. And I always try and touch them back to the workbooks, because the workbook has materials for every week of the curriculum that they can touch back in. And, there was one young guy who came in just like the week before we ended, and he said, do I really, get this workbook I'm going to be getting out? And I said, you don't just use that in here. You can take that home and you can start from the beginning and work through this workbook and utilize the things that we've talked about here in class and help it guide your journey as you figure out what it is that you want in relationships, and as you start to think about your communication patterns and your conflict resolution and all of the things that are affecting your relationships. And that's my best advice, is utilizing those workbooks is very, very helpful.
Great. Thank you, Laura. And I will say that it's not your typical workbook, as you had pointed out. It's very interactive, so that's good to hear that they like those. Marcia, there's a question here from Anna that says she can understand why sex offenders are not offered the services, but wanted to know why convicted arsonists are not given services. Is there a specific reason for that?
Yeah, it's sort of because when we developed the program, it started as a pilot program, and so we knew that adding all the wraparound services, and one of them is housing, that it was going to be pretty hard to be successful with that population. So because we were trying to be as successful as we could as a pilot, we sort of put those restraints on ourselves. So at any time we can go back as an agency and change that, which is I'm all for providing services for everybody, but I wasn't a part of that decision making. So It hasn't been changed, but because for employment purposes, it is very difficult. It has been very difficult to uh, find permanent employment for people with those convictions and housing.
Mm.
Oh, that makes sense. Well, there's another question here that I think I can help to answer. And of course, we've talked a lot about the Relationship Smarts Plus curriculum and the Love Notes curriculum. And someone wants to know, well, where in the world do we find these things? Well, I'm proud to say that we do publish these. You can find them on our website at dibbleInstitute.org. If you go up to the toolbar at the top, you can look at the different curricula that we do carry, and you can actually go to Relationship Smarts and look at a sample lesson, and you can go to Love Notes and look at a sample lesson. And at any time I can help you, you can email me at Kathy@DibbleInstitute.org or call the 1-800 number, which we'll have posted at the end.
You know, there was one question that did not get asked that I thought was relevant to Marcia's program. Our programs, the Dibble Institute is primarily interested in geared towards teen, young adult relationship skills education. But here we have the reentry program, and as Marcia said, my gosh, you have people who are coming in after years of incarceration. They're much older. They're not a young adult anymore. They're middle-aged often. How does that work, having a curriculum that was developed for young adults, work for you?
Well, if you've never had relationship education, no matter what age you are, it is valuable to receive. So we've had people who have spent 32 years inside of a prison. And if you spend 32 days inside of a prison in a violent and hostile environment, then you come home with those same behaviors and the thinking patterns of survival. You tend to treat people on the outside the way you did on the inside. And many of them never had healthy romantic relationships or healthy relationships with their parents. So they can't model what they've never seen. And it's really it's the best information on relationships I have. And I'm 60 years old this year. My oldest child is 41 years old. And I facilitated this curriculum with my own family. I have a granddaughter that's 20 and 17 and 16. And I watched how it has made a difference in their relationships and even going into relationships. So if you've never had the information, no matter what your age is, it's going to be applicable to you developing and maintaining healthy relationships because you've never been empowered with those skills or those tools before. So the gentleman who spent 32 years in prison, he just recently got married. He's been home for 2.5 years. And I actually was like, please don't get married right now. Give it some more time. But they were adamant on getting married, and they've been married over a year now. But Love Notes is a curriculum really anyone can benefit from, even because if you've never received it as a teenager, you need to have it.
Oh, thanks so much, Marcia, for clarifying that. And I just want to also remark that the Relationship Smarts program is aimed at students anywhere from 9th grade all the way through post-secondary school. And Love Notes is specifically written for high-risk individuals and young parents, young adult parents, or as Marcia said, those incarcerated as well. It works. The information is there, and it has the flexibility to use it. Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we leave you, I'd like to mention to you that any orders that are made on our website with the code webinar at checkout gets free shipping, which is a savings of 10%. And also that we are available, the recording is available for you to listen to again in 3 business days. These are our contact information. We're available to answer any of your questions. And if you have any questions that you can note in the brief survey, we'll make sure that you get an answer that best meets your needs. And thank you for completing that survey. It's short and sweet. Keep in touch. Look at our website. Subscribe to our newsletter. There's some important information. It only comes out once a month, and it has new latest in research and also anything that's going on with issues of young people and their love lives. Like us on Facebook, follow us on LinkedIn, and call us with any information and questions you need answered. September webinar, Kathy, we're kind of open right now. We're still negotiating a speaker for the September webinar, but it will be of value to you, and we will be sending you, once you register, we will be sending you information on the next webinar as well. Is that correct, Kathy?
Yes, and we should have that by next week. So I look forward to that. Every webinar has been very exciting. So again, thank you, Laura and Marcia. We appreciate it, and we appreciate the listeners out there and the work that you do.
Fabulous, fabulous job. Thank you for what you do, for all of you, and what you do to help make better futures for all of us. Thank you. Good night.
Goodbye.